Ethan's boots sank into the thick snow as he trudged across the frozen plains of Crithos 7. The wind howled like an angry beast, biting at every inch of his exposed skin. The sky above was a swirling canvas of icy blues and gray clouds, and the dim light of Crithos, distant sun, barely cut through the storm. He had underestimated the planet's winter, thinking his advanced suit and provisions would be enough. Now he could feel his energy draining, his fingers growing numb despite the thermal gloves, his breath forming frosty clouds that vanished instantly into the cold air. He squinted into the snow, scanning for any signs of shelter. His mission had been simple: scout the planet, record environmental data, and report back to the command station. But the storm had changed everything. Visibility dropped to mere meters, and the once solid landscape now appeared like a white abyss. Every step felt heavier than the last, his muscles aching with effort. Survival wasn't just difficult, it was fragile like a candle in the wind. Then, through the blur of snow, he noticed movement. At first he thought it was a trick of the storm, a shadow playing with his mind. But the shape grew clearer, small, fragile, and human-like, yet undeniably alien. The being was crouched low, trembling violently against the wind. Its skin shimmered faintly, reflecting the dull light, and subtle markings glowed along its arms and face. Ethan's heart thudded. Whoever or whatever this was, it was alive and clearly in trouble. "Hey," he called, his voice cracking slightly from the cold. "Are you okay? Can you stand?" The creature froze. Its glowing markings pulsed, flickering in what seemed like a rhythm, almost as if it were communicating. Ethan took a cautious step closer, mindful not to frighten it. Every instinct screamed to keep moving to survive, but he couldn't leave something alone in this storm. It was then he noticed how small it was, almost childlike. Its large, luminescent eyes met his, wide with fear and distrust. Ethan raised his hand slowly. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly. "I can help. Here, take this." He removed his sleeping bag from his pack, holding it out. The alien girl hesitated, her glowing skin shifting in patterns that Ethan couldn't yet understand. She edged forward slowly, the snow crunching under her delicate feet. She looked cold, too cold and desperate. Finally, she slipped inside the sleeping bag, curling into its warmth. Ethan followed, sharing the bag as best he could, feeling her body heat mingle with his. The storm continued to rage around them, but for a brief moment they were safe. Ethan could sense her shivering gradually slowing, her breathing evening out. He studied her closely. Her skin had an iridescent quality, shifting between soft blues and greens. Her ears were slightly pointed and her fingers longer than a human's, with tiny, translucent tips that seemed almost fragile. She was beautiful in a way he had never imagined, and human empathy surged inside him. She needed him. He couldn't leave her. Hours passed in near silence. Ethan tried to make small conversation, though she didn't respond in words. Instead, her glowing patterns shifted, and he realized they might be a form of language he didn't yet understand. He began to observe them carefully, noting the slow rhythm of her pulses, the way they brightened when he moved closer or spoke softly. "Don't worry," he murmured. "I'll get us through the night." She blinked at him, the glow in her eyes intensifying briefly, like a flicker of understanding or gratitude. Ethan wasn't sure, but it was enough to keep him moving forward. He shared what little he had with her, a few ration bars, some water, and a quiet, steady presence. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving a calm but brutally cold landscape. Ethan stepped outside the sleeping bag, rubbing his eyes and stretching stiff muscles. The alien girl remained inside, her glow now faint but steady. She reached for something tucked into her small pack and handed it to him, a tiny device that pulsed gently with light. Ethan took it, puzzled. "What is this?" he asked. Her markings flickered in a pattern he didn't understand. She made soft, melodic sounds, almost like singing, though there were no words he could recognize. Ethan smiled. "I guess it's a gift," he said. "Thank you." Before he could investigate further, a low rumble echoed across the snow. Ethan's blood ran cold. The creatures of Crithos 7 were not kind. The storm had driven them out of their usual territory. Large, hulking predators with jagged claws and icy hides were approaching. They smelled him and the alien girl. "Stay behind me," Ethan whispered. He knew he had only one chance. Using the environment to his advantage, he quickly scanned the area, noting snowdrifts, frozen rocks, and shallow caves that might serve as temporary shelter. With quick thinking, he fashioned a makeshift trap, a series of weighted sticks and snow-covered pits designed to slow the creatures down. The alien girl watched him, her glowing markings shifting rapidly. Then, almost instinctively, she helped. She moved with agility Ethan could not match, sensing vibrations in the snow he couldn't detect. Together, they laid their trap, hiding themselves behind a rocky outcrop. The first predator approached, large and menacing, its icy breath visible in the air. Ethan held his breath as the creature stepped onto the trap, its massive body tipping forward into a pit. The others followed, one by one, falling into traps or being distracted by the alien girl's subtle manipulations of energy in the air, some kind of defensive ability she possessed. Hours later, the last predator fled, defeated or dissuaded. Ethan slumped to the ground, exhausted, snow sticking to his sweat-damp clothes. He looked at the alien girl who now glowed faintly in the dim light. She smiled, or at least, the closest thing she had to a human smile. "You saved me," she said, her voice a series of musical tones. Ethan couldn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. Her eyes met his, and he felt an unspoken connection, a silent promise of trust. As they continued through the frozen plains, Ethan realized something profound. The alien girl was not just a survivor, she was a teacher. Her instincts, her abilities, and her perspective on the world were alien but brilliant. He began to follow her lead, learning to sense patterns in the environment, to anticipate danger, and even to conserve energy in ways he had never considered. By nightfall, they found the outline of a strange, partially buried structure, alien in design but clearly a shelter of some sort. Inside, warmth radiated from a faint energy source. The alien girl gestured for Ethan to enter first, then herself. It was safe for now, but they both knew the journey was far from over. Inside, Ethan finally examined the device she had given him. It was small, crystalline, and pulsed gently with light. A display flickered to life when he touched it, showing symbols he didn't understand. Yet somehow he felt a connection to it, as if it was a key to understanding her world or hers to understanding his. He looked at the alien girl, her eyes glowing softly. "I don't know what this is," he said, "but I'll figure it out, and we'll survive this together." For the first time since the storm began, Ethan felt hope, not just for himself, but for this strange, beautiful creature who had come into his life. They were partners now, different species, different worlds, but bound by trust, survival, and something deeper that neither fully understood. As he settled down for the night in the alien shelter, sharing warmth with the girl once more, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew one thing: humanity's courage, ingenuity, and compassion had earned him an ally in the most unexpected place. And she had given him far more than he had ever expected, not just gratitude, but trust, companionship, and a glimpse of something extraordinary in a frozen, unforgiving world. The night in the alien shelter was quiet, but Ethan couldn't rest completely. The alien girl, whom he had begun calling Lyra in his mind for simplicity, seemed to sleep lightly, her glowing markings pulsing softly like a heartbeat. He sat against the cold wall, examining the small crystalline device she had given him. Its light flickered gently, and he could feel a strange warmth emanating from it, almost as if it had a life of its own. Though he didn't understand its function, he sensed its importance. Morning came slowly. The frozen plains outside were still harsh, but the storm had passed. Ethan stretched, feeling soreness in muscles he hadn't realized he was using so much. Lyra stirred, opening her eyes, which glimmered like twin stars in the dim light. She watched him silently, her gaze curious, cautious, and trusting all at once. He smiled softly. "Ready to move?" he asked. Though she didn't speak, her glowing markings shifted, affirming that she was. Together, they left the shelter, venturing back into the endless snow. Ethan noticed that Lyra seemed to sense the environment in ways he couldn't. She moved with purpose, occasionally stopping to touch the snow, sniff the wind, or tilt her head as if listening to something he couldn't hear. Hours passed as they navigated through jagged ice formations and frozen rivers. The alien girl guided him, and he followed, learning from her instincts. When they encountered patches of thin ice, she would stop and gesture him to carefully test the surface before stepping. When they passed through areas with high predator activity, she led him along narrow paths where he would be harder to detect. As the sun climbed higher, Ethan realized something remarkable. Lyra was teaching him, and he was learning. He marveled at her abilities, her keen senses, and her subtle ways of communicating through her glowing skin. He began to interpret the pulses, the shifts in color, as emotions or warnings. When her markings glowed bright orange, danger was near. When they softened to blue, it was calm. Slowly, a silent language formed between them, one based on trust, observation, and instinct rather than words. By mid-afternoon, they reached the edge of a valley. Ethan saw the ruins of an alien structure, perhaps a settlement, but it was mostly buried in snow. Lyra approached cautiously, scanning the area, then motioned for him to follow. Inside, remnants of warmth from old energy sources remained, faint but usable. Ethan quickly assessed the place. He could make temporary shelters, block entrances, and keep both of them safe. While Ethan prepared the shelter, Lyra examined the area with precision. She pointed out hidden tunnels and small energy nodes, which Ethan learned to manipulate. To his amazement, her species had a way of sensing energy flows in the environment, something entirely alien but incredibly useful. Using her guidance, Ethan managed to reactivate a minor energy source, enough to provide warmth and light. He realized that survival wasn't just about human ingenuity. It was about learning, adapting, and cooperating. As evening fell, the bond between them grew stronger. Ethan shared stories of Earth, his childhood memories, and simple things he loved: warmth, friendship, and small comforts. Lyra listened, her glowing skin pulsing in rhythm to his voice, and occasionally she shared snippets of her life in melodic tones. Though he couldn't understand her words, he understood her meaning through gestures, expressions, and the flow of her light. Suddenly, a distant rumble echoed through the valley. Ethan froze, scanning the horizon. A pack of native predators was approaching. These creatures were smarter and faster than the ones they had encountered before. Ethan turned to Lyra. "We need a plan," he said. She responded with a quick series of glowing flashes, pointing toward a hidden tunnel she had noticed earlier. Together, they sprang into action. Ethan set traps with the debris and ice around them, while Lyra moved with unmatched agility, sensing every tremor and vibration in the snow. The first predator approached, massive and covered in icy armor. It charged at them, but Lyra leapt to the side, guiding Ethan's throw of a weighted rock that struck the creature and delayed it. Another predator followed, but Ethan used the traps he had set, causing it to stumble into a pit. Hours of careful maneuvers, quick thinking, and coordinated action passed. By nightfall, the predators had retreated, defeated or discouraged by the duo's clever tactics. Ethan's body was exhausted, but his mind was alight with respect for Lyra. She had not only survived this dangerous world but had taught him how to see it differently, how to read it in ways a human never could. After the danger passed, they found shelter in a deeper section of the ruins. Lyra guided him to a hidden room, where the temperature was slightly warmer and the walls contained faint alien inscriptions. Ethan examined them, fascinated. He realized that this place was more than just ruins. It was a center of knowledge, perhaps once a hub for her people. Lyra's device pulsed softly, almost as if acknowledging the significance of the site. Night fell again, but this time it felt different. Ethan and Lyra settled together for warmth, their shared experiences having created a bond that transcended language and species. Ethan looked at her, glowing softly in the dim light, and felt a deep admiration and gratitude. She had offered him more than just survival. She had offered him companionship, trust, and lessons that were invaluable. The next morning, Ethan decided they needed to find her people. He had no idea where they were, but Lyra's instincts were precise. She moved with certainty, and he followed, learning to anticipate dangers she sensed before they appeared. Along the way, he observed her unique ways of interacting with the environment, how she could detect subtle changes in air pressure, read faint energy currents, and even sense approaching creatures long before they were visible. Ethan realized that her gifts were extraordinary, but so was her choice to trust him. As they traveled, he shared more about human ingenuity and survival. He taught her simple techniques for setting traps, improvising shelters, and rationing food in extreme conditions. She watched him closely, absorbing every detail. It was an exchange of knowledge, a partnership that blended human resourcefulness with alien abilities. Together, they became stronger, more capable, and more in sync with the hostile world around them. After several days of travel, they finally spotted a distant glow on the horizon. Ethan squinted. At first, he thought it might be another predator, but as they got closer, he realized it was a settlement. Alien structures rose from the snow, their smooth curves and glowing accents unmistakable. Lyra stopped and looked back at him, her markings pulsing softly. She pointed toward the settlement, then made a series of melodic tones, signaling that it was time to go forward. Cautiously they approached. The alien guards at the entrance were tall and imposing, with similar glowing markings as Lyra. They stopped, wary of Ethan, their eyes scanning him carefully. Lyra stepped forward, her glow intensifying, signaling that he was a friend. The guards hesitated, then lowered their weapons slightly. Inside the settlement, Ethan saw that Lyra's people were diverse and intelligent, moving with purpose, their glowing markings expressing emotion and communication constantly. Ethan realized that he was an outsider, yet he felt a strange sense of welcome. Lyra led him to a central chamber where elders of her people gathered. They observed him silently, their expressions unreadable at first. Ethan stepped forward, hands raised to show he carried no weapons. Lyra stood beside him, her glow calm and steady. Slowly, one elder approached. Ethan remembered all the lessons he had learned over the past days: trust, patience, courage, and empathy. He spoke softly, explaining his mission, his intentions, and his desire to help her and survive together. The elder observed him carefully, then nodded. Lyra's markings pulsed in delight, and the elder gestured for Ethan to stay. Though he was far from home, he felt a deep sense of accomplishment and connection. He had survived a hostile world, protected an alien girl, and earned the trust of her people, all through courage, compassion, and ingenuity. That night, Ethan shared a quiet moment with Lyra. She stepped close, her glow mingling with his own presence, and gestured for him to rest near her. For the first time in days, he felt truly safe. He realized that the gift she had offered him, the trust, companionship, and guidance, was far more valuable than anything he could have imagined. It was a bond that transcended worlds, species, and even language. As he drifted into sleep, he thought of Earth, of humanity, and of the simple truth he had learned. Courage, empathy, and the willingness to help another being could create connections that were stronger than the harshest storm, more enduring than the coldest night. Lyra had given him far more than survival. She had offered friendship, trust, and a glimpse into a world where cooperation and understanding bridged even the greatest divides. The frozen plains of Crithos 7 had tested him, shaped him, and transformed him. And now, with Lyra by his side, he knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, humanity's spirit, brave, clever, and compassionate, could shine across the stars. Together, they looked out at the glowing alien settlement, ready for whatever adventures awaited, bound by